On this episode of Aging Wheels, I talk about cheap fun. That one. Not that one. That one. Let's talk about expectations. What I expected from a 1986 Accord was for it to be lightweight, have nimble steering, great response from all the inputs, a buzzy little engine, not all that much power, but for it to be quite a bit of fun. Unfortunately, expectations don't always meet up to reality. Let me describe to you what this car is actually like to drive. The steering is an 80s power steering system. It's fairly light, but the biggest problem is it lacks any sort of feedback, which I guess is fine if you're just commuting to work every day. The second big problem is what's driving the wheels. Unfortunately, it's an automatic transmission. Now, in a small, lightweight car like this, I'd really want a manual, but you can't always have everything, so this automatic does the job. It's not particularly slushy, but it is quite unrefined. Another disappointment is the engine. While it isn't very powerful, I did expect that. The problem is that it's not the most exciting engine in the world. It's just it's a commuter engine. That's about the best way to put it. What really bothers me is the suspension and the brakes, because going around these corners, it's quite wayward. It kind of flops around the road. It does ride pretty comfortably, which is what this car was made for. And the brakes feel like they're not doing anything. They could be drum brakes, so I haven't actually looked. But to critique this car dynamically is sort of missing the point. This is a 1986 Honda Accord, and as such, we should really appreciate it. Oh dear, corner. Shift! Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay, it can do it. Now, why should I appreciate this car? Well, imagine a brand new cheap car, an Econobox like a Fiesta. It's nothing special, except for the ST version, of course. It's nothing special, but in 30 years from now, do you think you're going to see many brand new or current day Fiestas on the road? No, you're not. How many other 1986 Honda Accord hatchbacks have you seen on the road? Not very many, I would be willing to bet. It's the really interesting cars that are still going to be left around. Cars like this, and even worse cars like K cars or the original Dodge minivans, they're not going to be around that long because nobody cares about them. They're just going to trash them. They're going to end up at salvage yards or rusting away in a field somewhere. That's why we should keep these cars around as a reminder of the past. These cars are still important, even though they may not be very interesting. And that's exactly why we should appreciate it. This is a car that was made by Honda to get people from point A to B reliably for about 8 years before they throw the car away. I mean, just look at the inspection sticker on this car. It's like the factory workers just said, okay, we're done here. I mean, it's not even on straight. The sticker itself is crooked. It just shows that this car was around to make Honda some money, get people where they need to go, and that's about it. No real passion was put into this car. This is a 30-year-old car that's still around, and it's nothing special. It's just a Honda Accord. And the owner of this car loves it. It doesn't matter that it drives poorly. This is his only car, and he likes the car, and that's all that matters. He's keeping it around for future generations to know what everybody drove on a daily basis back then. Whenever back then was. In this case, it was in the 1980s. But not everybody's going to want to go on Craigslist and buy an 80s Accord for, let's say, $1,500, even if it is that cheap, because it's an Accord. The people that should be buying this car are young gearheads, people of about 16 years old they're still in high school and are buying their first car. This would be a perfect car for a first car for many reasons. One, obviously it's cheap. Two, it would be really easy to fix so they could learn how to fix things, and the parts would be cheap. It would be mostly reliable, and really it's sort of fun to drive. I mean, it's no Civic Si or CRX or anything, but it's mostly lightweight. Unfortunately, that does also mean they'll probably die in a head-on crash or any type of accident. But don't tell their mom that doesn't matter. This engine makes all of about 98 horsepower from the factory, which coincidentally is the same exact power output of my first car, which was a 79 Jeep CJ7. And this thing feels a lot faster than that did. And there's still enough on this car to keep you entertained. If you get an Accord hatchback with a manual, that's mildly enjoyable. It's still no sports car, obviously. You could, I don't know, beef up the suspension and take it autocrossing. You could leave it parked in your driveway and just admire the pop-up headlights. Speaking of which, I think we should do an homage to pop-up headlights. So in summary, no, this isn't a very interesting car. No, it isn't particularly fun to drive, but by golly, if this car isn't cheap and not very interesting, so it's not going to be around very long. So my advice for you is to get this car for a 16-year-old, teach him some mechanical skills, or her, teach her some mechanical skills. Have them keep this car going for many generations to come. And somebody, like the owner of this car, will care for it. And if you really want something fun, get a Civic Si of the same year. I hear they're a blast to drive. One bit of a side note though, if you get your teenager this car, you should probably change out the timing belt because it has an interference engine and a timing belt, so you might want to check up on that regularly.